In today's video, I want to talk about one element of War Thunder gameplay that I think players drastically undervalue its importance. And if they took it more seriously, I guarantee they would see an increase in in-game performance and satisfaction while playing the game, whether you're a new player or an experienced one. And I'm talking about movement.
I have nothing else planned for this afternoon.
We put such an emphasis on gun performance and armor values in War Thunder, whereas with more emphasis on methodical movement, you can mitigate the limitations of your gun and armor and catch more opponents by surprise. I'm going to go over a few important movement fundamentals that I incorporate into every single one of my matches that helps me improve my performances, that I guarantee will also improve yours as well. For those of you who are unfamiliar with my channel or are curious on why some random guy on the internet thinks his tips would help you in War Thunder, I was actually a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout in the US Army, where I served as a Bradley gunner. I have experience in real-world recon operations including camouflage, movement, and observation. And when I started playing War Thunder, I was surprised at how well a lot of my real-world training actually translates to War Thunder gameplay, especially in realistic battles and sim battles. And the least I can do is provide some of those tips, that way you can improve your game as well. The first fundamental is understanding the importance of your silhouette. Whenever you're conducting movement across the map, you always need to be aware of how the color of your tank interacts with the environment around you. If you don't use bushes, this is even more critical for you, as most tanks have very unnatural shapes, angles, and colors, which makes it even harder to fit into your environment. The fastest way between 2 points is a straight line. However, generally in military terms, the straight line is usually the most dangerous route. Let's move on to our first example to illustrate this point. Here you can see a tiger on top of a ridgeline. Notice how the dark color of the tank is compared to the sky. Also notice how the sharp angles on the tank don't fit within this environment. This is a perfect example of showing how a silhouette works, and how it also shows how risky it is to traverse on the crests of hills and ridgelines where your silhouette is at pure force when you have the sky as your background. This screenshot shows the same tank but traveling underneath the crest of the hill. The tank still doesn't fit with its surroundings with its color and angles, but the silhouette against the grass is less prevalent because the grass is a darker color than the light blue sky. Let's see how these two screenshots play out in an actual battle. Here we are on the map Carpathians, in which I'm sure a lot of you have experience playing on. This area is directly outside of the team on the northeast spawn, heading towards the A point. Now, the most direct route from the spawn to the A point would travel over the top of this ridgeline, whereas the less traveled route, or a longer distance, would take the road down at a lower elevation. Our vehicle is going to be simulated being placed at the border of F4 and F5. And we are going to be looking towards the enemy northern spawn around the C5 area. I play on Ultra Max graphics, and here's what it looks like to see a tank crossing at the highest point of the hill where its silhouette is visible against the sky. As you see in the distance, you can clearly see an enemy tank crossing the crest of that hill against the blue sky. You don't even need binoculars to see that guy. All you have to be doing is paying a little bit attention. Now, let me show you a clip of what it looks like when an enemy is not traversing the crest of the hill, but rather in front of it, like the second screenshot I just showed you. Okay, so here we can see the tank traversing on the front side of the hill and not at the crest. Any experienced player could still see that tank, but as you can see, it doesn't stand out nearly as much of when it crested the top of the hill. Whenever you travel the map, never use the crest of hills or ridges, as they provide unnecessary exposure and risk, especially at top tier. The second fundamental is understanding and utilizing dead space. In layman's terms, dead space refers to any area that you know is there, but you cannot directly observe it or provide direct fire upon. So we are on Fields of Poland. We just captured the C point, and we're down here in F5. Now, in close proximity to my direct front, I can see the grassy plain and a few bushes. In the distance, I can see a lot of trees, and I can see these rolling little hills. Now, if we look to the left, we can actually see a dirt road. However, the more right we go, we can't see the road anymore, but we know the road is there. The road is in that little piece of low ground in between the plain to my front and the hills in the back. So that road to the right of my screen that I cannot directly observe because of the nature of the ground, that would be considered dead space. We know it's there, but we can't directly observe it or shoot that way. Whenever you're attacking or conducting a flank, you want to utilize as much dead space as possible. This minimizes the chance of your detection and increases the chances of you catching an enemy off guard. On the defensive, you want to pick a position with limited dead space to decrease the opponent's ability to flank and surprise you. And if you're familiar with the map and know where the dead space is, you can spoil their surprises. Now, let's switch to the point of view of a potential enemy that's trying to defend the C point, and he's looking out over that grassy field. See if you can spot the puma traveling through the dead space. How many times did you see the puma? Let's go back and watch it again, and I'll put an arrow above the puma where it is when it pops out. We actually were only able to physically see the puma 3 times while it conducted its movement, therefore highlighting the importance of how effective dead space can be when you're conducting any sort of attack or flank on an enemy position or capture point. The third movement fundamental is called a seals check. This type of check in real-world tactics is what we do during dismounted operations, but since War Thunder engines are so loud, you can actually conduct this stop in the game. It actually stands for stop, look, listen, and smell, but since it's a video game and can't smell anything, we'll just call it a seal stop. Stop, look, and listen. It can be super tempting to move until contact, but then you run the risk of getting caught out of position or by surprise. By stopping, looking, and listening after every few hundred meters, you can reduce the risk of getting detected and increase your own chances of detecting those close aboard opponents. We have all been in situations at some point in time in War Thunder where there was an enemy right next to us and we didn't realize it because they were sitting still while we were moving. Lastly, let's talk about CAS. We have all seen the rage CAS can induce, and while there is no way to completely eliminate the threat of CAS, you can take these steps to reduce the amount of times you get taken out by airplanes. When you're doing your route planning, always make sure you have some buildings or tall trees along your path. This isn't always a possibility because some maps are more open than others, but like I said, there is no way to completely eliminate the risk. All you can do is your best to mitigate it. First tip to survive CAS: make yourself an extension of an already existing object. In this example, we're on Eastern Europe in our KV-2 looking towards the sea point. I hear planes coming, so I decided to rub against this house for cover. Now, from an aerial perspective, there I am. But if you zoom out to what a CAS player would see, I look like an extension of the building. Even if he does see me, he has to line up the perfect bomb run to take me out. Therefore, this might discourage their attempt, and they might search for an easier target. Second tip for CAS: find foliage to hide under. Later, we continue to push forward into the forest. Again, I hear planes, so I duck under this tree. From an aerial point of view, there are only certain angles in which I'm visible, but the color of my tank mixed with the natural foliage increases my chance of not being seen. Third tip for CAS: never conduct your movement unnecessarily or stop in the open except to shoot. Here I am traveling through the woods and then the open ground. Look at the difference between being able to spot my tank from when I'm traveling in the woods versus the open ground. I'm a sitting duck in the open, and I should have continued farther into the woods if I wanted to really stay alive. Here, I'm stopped in the open. I'm not moving, but now there's no close similar colors. Anyone who zooms the camera on me will be able to determine I'm a target. Always try to conduct and stop your movement within foliage or next to structures or some other object to break your silhouette from the top. Final tip for CAS: limit your machine gun fire to just a couple short bursts. We all know how tempting it is to want to spray a bunch of machine gun rounds at enemy tanks so they become lit for our teammates. You only need a couple of rounds to do so. You don't need to dump the whole magazine. The longer you sustain your fire, the easier it is to see the tracers from the sky, and it also allows the enemy pilot to really focus and zero in where specifically you are and where he needs to drop his bomb. However, if you use a couple short bursts instead, Every time you shoot, the opponent's going to have to refocus and try and figure out where you are. It'll cost them more time, which they might get frustrated and choose a different target, or if you have friendly aircraft, they can jump in the fight. And really, the only tip I have to kind of minimize the effect of revenge bombing is every time you take an opponent out, try to change your position. But otherwise, I think that's just an element of the game that we're all just going to have to suffer with for the foreseeable future. I guarantee that if you take these fundamentals into account when you play War Thunder, you'll see an increase in your performance and efficacy as well. I know for me personally, I would rather get the same amount of RP playing 10 good games versus playing 20 poor games. If you learned anything or enjoyed the video today, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button, and let me know down in the comments how these fundamentals help you in your battles. Also, if there's a question or a topic or a vehicle that you want me to cover on the channel, leave that in the comments as well, and I'll do my best to see if I can't get a video out for you. I appreciate all of your support as always, everyone. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the battlefield.